Hey, it's Derek from WatchMeCode.net. So, over in the WatchMeCode community Slack, there's a channel that we have called Pushback. And the whole purpose of that particular channel is for people to ask questions about how to introduce new technologies, new ideas, new techniques, new whatever into an organization. It's a place where you can get help overcoming the pushback that you get from technical leads, project managers, team leadership, executives, IT, whoever it might be that's pushing back against the things that you want to try. And all of this comes down to kind of one basic question that I've got some experience with, but I also want to hear from you about your experience. And that question is, how do you go about introducing new technology, new techniques, new tools, new anything into an organization? And I'll share with you what I think is a good strategy in a moment, but first, I do have a story for you. So, a fair number of jobs ago, I was working for a company that was all .NET. It was like C# everywhere. Everything we did was .NET. We were a .NET shop, quote unquote. Everything we did was .NET, Microsoft platform, etc. And at one point, I was kind of halfway sort of tech lead on a project that had one developer on it. This person was essentially running the project by himself, but I was listed officially as the tech lead, and he would come to me for advice and direction and general questions that he wasn't able to answer on his own. And in the process of getting this project up and running, he came to me at one point with this crazy new technology called Ruby on Rails. Now, you've probably heard of that at this point, but way back in the day, this was literally the very first time I had ever heard of this Ruby on Rails thing. So think 2006, 2007 kind of era. And he showed me these tools and this development environment that he had put together for Ruby on Rails and the process of developing and deploying and everything else. And it was great. It looked pretty cool. But I was very concerned about the long-term ability of this Ruby system to be maintained, to be developed, to be, I had no idea at the time whether or not it was going to be around in another 6 months, let alone 6 years or whatever. So I said, no, I just, sorry, I don't want that technology on this project. I think there's too much risk involved in doing that at this point. Well, he was disappointed, of course, but, he went on and built the project out the way it needed to be built using .NET and actually did some really cool stuff with .NET that was very reminiscent of Ruby on Rails at the time. And it was overall a really good project. So fast forward a couple of years, and I am contacting somebody to come into the same company for my team, including this person that I had previously said no to. And I'm having this person come in to do some training on Ruby. Not Ruby on Rails specifically, but on Ruby for web testing, which at the time, the .NET scene didn't have a really good test automation process for web development, so we were thinking about using Ruby for this because the story there was a lot better. So we go through a couple of days of training, and we get some really good ideas, and we get a whole lot of good information about how this whole web automation testing works out of this process. And at the end of these 2 days, I'm talking with the person that's doing this training, and he's suggesting to me that I bring Ruby into our environment, not just because it's going to help out with the web development or the web testing, but also because it could possibly help out with a lot of other areas that are ancillary to our core products. Now, the core products, of course, were built in .NET, but .NET didn't have any wonderful, great, amazing build systems at the time. There were things like inant, which was XML-based, and there were a few other build tools at the time, but none that I really, truly fell in love with. And so this person suggested that I take some time and build a Ruby and Rake build system for .NET. Now that produced a build system that I called Albacore, dolphinsafe.net tasks for Rake. And long story short, I ended up falling in love with Ruby, and we ended up using Ruby in a lot of different projects inside of this company. But it wasn't a wholesale, let's build a project in Ruby. Instead, it was more of a, well, this build process, these build tools, test automation, these ancillary things that are not core to the product, we can do those things in Ruby. And it's easy, it's safe, it's not going to be a problem for the deployment or the IT department or the production support people, because they don't have to know anything about Ruby. They only have to deal with .NET and the Microsoft platform. But us developers, well, we can sneak Ruby in over here, and we can sneak Ruby in over there, and we can have just a little bit more control over the tools that we use because it doesn't affect anyone else. So how do you get new technologies, new tools, new processes into a corporate environment, into a team, into a client, into wherever it is? Well, chances are you're going to get a lot of pushback if you just try to go wholesale into something, all or nothing. But if you can find those little areas, those little places where it's safe to bring in that new tool, that new technique, and you can show some real benefit in that area, then you might just be able to get your foot in the door. And once you get your foot in the door, and once you start getting that new code, that new tool, that new technique in place, it kind of opens up a little bit. While I had previously been the person that said, no, sorry, we're not going to use Ruby, I now was the person that said, hey, look, we're using Ruby. This is great. I want to use Ruby more. There's a lot of value to this. So what are the ways that you get new technology into your systems, into your work, into your team? How do you go about doing that? I don't think there's any one real single answer to this. It very much depends on the individual situation, the team, the project, the client, all the different circumstances that you have to consider. I would love to hear your techniques and your advice for getting something new into your team and environment. So be sure to leave a comment down below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel for more Thoughts on Code presented by WatchMeCode.net.